All right, moving on, we're on chapter 4, building a selected set. And the purpose of this chapter is to explain to you the inner workings of NASIS and how it's all designed. I brought the schema or the image up on from the chapter just so that I can use it as a talking point. We have the national database, and that national database resides in Kansas City. And it contains all of the country's information, all the soils information across the country. And anybody can query that database and look at any data across the country. That data is stored in the SQL Server 2008 database, and that is the server application of this whole method. The client application, which is the local database, is that SQL Server Express 2008 that was loaded on your PC when we loaded NASIS user interface software at the same time. Okay, now that local database contains a piece or a selected piece of information from the national database. You can't load everything up from the national onto your local, and please do not try. It's not worth the time and effort to try it. Your database on your PC can't handle that amount of data. So it's designed for a smaller piece like an ML array or a state, about the maximum that you can load up on one. And then the last thing that we have is this selected set, and those are the edit tables, and you're going to be seeing those in the user interface. So with that thought process, we've got the national database in Kansas City, local database resides on your PC, and then the selected set is the user interface itself. Let's go into the NASIS and take a look at what we're discussing here. Whenever you run a query against the national database, and basically what you're going to be doing, I'm going to go back to my favorite query again, area, L map unit, DMU by area symbol. I want the official data, and I'm going to run this against the national database. Now, when I run this against the national database, I'm going to select a target table. Why do I select a particular target table? In this situation, I select the highest level target table. We discussed objects before, so you have to go back to that discussion to understand what the highest level is. The legend would be the information that would collect all the legend, the map unit, and the data map unit. Well, you might ask, why is area not there? Keep in mind, the area, all of the area data is located in your local database. It already resides in your on your PC. What we're doing now is querying the national database to retrieve information that's not in our local database by default. So if I chose legend, it would retrieve all of the legend and all the additional information. If I chose map unit, notice that it switches the objects to download, just map unit being the highest level. And then if I chose data map unit, then I would only get the 4 of the data map unit to put on the site and transite. So by choosing legend, I get all of this information. And then I can come in here and type in KS155, and I could run this query. It would go up to the national database, and it would extract all of that information for KS155 and then populate my local database with that information. Now, when it does that, what ends up happening is this little icon is a setup local database icon. And the setup local database appears after you run a query against the national database. And this is what it looks like. Now, you can flip through each one of the objects, and if you'll remember from my previous video, I had downloaded KS169. So here is the legend for KS169. Here's all of the map units. Notice that they all say local. Well, when you run a national query, these will all say national until you accept. And you'll notice that my accept button is dimmed out because I did not query for anything, and there's nothing national in my local database. And then data map unit, it also contained information. Same with the site, the PET-ON, the transx. And so you can see that this is a tool that you use to identify what's in your local database. Keep in mind, you're going to continually append that local database. And your next thought is, okay, if I keep appending it, and I've got 105 counties in here already, How do I get rid of some of those counties? Well, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of. And I'm going to use map units as an example on how to do this. The very first thing you need to be aware of is you can literally clear the entire local database. It's going to, it could get to a point where you keep writing more and more national queries, and it becomes too large and too manageable. You can clear your local database this way. But let's say that you've got your entire MLRA worth of survey areas and map units and data map units and pedons and all the information necessary. But there's some information in there that's so archaic that you really don't care about, and you don't want to store it on your local machine. Okay, so in a good case in this, see all these uppercase map units? I know these uppercase map units are additional map units. I know just because I know the database, that they're really not anything that I am going to be concerned about or use right now in any of my videos here. So I could come up here and I could highlight those that I want, and I could click on exclude. Now this exclude button works in two ways. One, after you run a national query and you choose to be able to, the national query brings down more information than what you're really wanting. But you don't want to clear the whole thing and start all over. You could come in here and highlight that information that you don't want, and you could exclude it from the national download. Or in the case that I'm showing you right now, there's information that's in my local database that I would like to remove, but I don't want to remove everything. So then I could come over here and click accept, and then what it will do is it'll go up to the national database and say, hey, he wants to remove these from his local database, and lo and behold, they're gone. Now, it didn't impact any of the other map units. It only impacted those that I had highlighted that were all uppercase. So that gives you an example of how you've got the national database sitting in Kansas City. You got the local database sitting on your machine. Okay, next thing you got to do is let's get into this selected set. I'm going to switch queries from the national query, and just before I do this, I want to show you, I'm running this against my local database. There are no filters in this query. I could type in KS169 and I would load up everything associated with KS169. All the map units, all the data map units, everything that I selected here. But running against the local database allows you to apply your first set of filters. And so I'm going to move up to the query above this, and I'm going to run it against the local database. And here I can begin to filter, because the way this particular query is written, it allows me to filter my information. And then I can type in KS169. Well, okay, what's the first filter? The first filter is the map unit status. And I can say, which status do I want? Well, I'm only working with the correlated map units, and that's the only thing I want to see is my correlated map units. And remember, a map unit can have more than one data map unit. Well, we can only mark one of those as a representative data map unit. And so I only want the representative data map unit. And so by doing so, I can now apply a filter in my query. And this is the first level filter that we can use. And so then I could run this query, and then I could then begin to populate my database. Well, this is my local database. Let's run over to tables, and then let's open up the legend table. This is my selected set, and my selected set now contains that legend. I'm going to open up my map unit. Here's my map unit table. Here's all of the map units that are correlated map units. How do I know that? Because I can come over here and I can open up the legend map unit table, and the legend map unit table is where the status appears. Remember, it's one of the bold italic columns, and so this only has correlated. That query allowed me to filter out only for correlated correlated map units. And then the last thing is my data map units. And now here are all of my data map units associated with this particular legend. So you can see now we've got the national database residing in Kansas City. I have to run a query against it in order to retrieve data to populate my local database. I have methods that allow me to clear my local database or exclude particular sets of information and remove those from my local database. This is how I go to find out what's in my local database. And then I also have a selected set, and my selected set is on my tables. And I can open it up and look at my tables. Now, keep in mind, NASIS is a read-only database. I can't come in here and edit these. I have to be able to be in the particular group that owns this set of data. And this particular set of data is owned by MLRA05 Denver, and the group is 5-SAL Salina. And if I was in that group, I could then come in here and I could check out this data, and then once it's checked out, I could then edit it. So there's no fear in downloading data that you want to look at, because you can't edit data unless you're a member of that group. So you could load data from California if you're in Florida. You could load data from Maine if you're in Kansas. You could download any data that you want to and look at that data, and with absolutely no fear of harming that data, because the database managers in each one of the regional offices assign who has permissions to edit that data. So never be in fear of manipulating data that you do not own. So that basically gives you this synopsis of the national database, the local database, and the selected set. And as always, if you ever have questions, open up your Office communicator and send me a note or fire me an email, whichever one you'd prefer. And that basically wraps up the Chapter 4 information. And if there's any questions on particular queries, or how a particular query runs, or if you're looking for a particular query, feel free to contact me. That ends this Chapter 4 video series.